Good afternoon. It's Friday, November 29th, 2024. I hope you and your family had a good Thanksgiving Day yesterday. We did at our house and enjoyed ourselves. The devotional for today and next Tuesday's devotional are two parts of a whole. They both have to do with an important key word, and that word is the word submission. Submission is a word that often loses its true meaning and is quite often misused by those who desire to unjustly dominate others. Submission is a voluntary action of yielding to something or someone. Stories told years ago of an army wife who was leaving the base, headed into town to do some shopping. There is a traffic circle just outside the base with a large yield sign at the entrance to the traffic circle. Just behind the kind woman was an impatient Army colonel who hated being behind anyone. When the woman reached the yield sign, she slowed and then stopped because the traffic circle was full of traffic. The colonel shouted from behind her, "That sign says yield, not surrender." And she replies back, "I'm driving a Ford, not a tank." She voluntarily chose to yield to the other traffic. The colonel wanted to demand her give way to his wishes. The woman understood what submission was. She voluntarily yielded to the heavy volume of traffic. The colonel thought he could tell everybody what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and didn't understand what it meant when someone chose not to follow his instructions. And he didn't understand the word submission. Submission was her voluntary action. It is not agreeing to his arbitrary demands just because he demanded them. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21 to 24, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, second edition, says, "And further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. For wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For a husband is the head of his wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He is the Savior of his body, the church. As the church submits to Christ, so you wives should submit to your husbands in everything." It starts out by saying submit to one another. That means part of Paul's instructions for how to live this Christian life is to not always be demanding our own way, not always having to be the one who's right and the one in charge, but choosing to yield to godly people. He starts out saying submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then he specifically mentions wives. And he says one of the ones they ought to submit to is their husband. I want to make it very plain and very clear here. This does not say that all women ought to submit to all men. It specifically refers to the husband and wife relationship. He says, wife, voluntarily choose to submit to your husband because he has the responsibility to care for you as Christ cared for the church. I was talking with a woman one time that was having trouble submitting to her husband. I asked her, "Well, why'd you marry him if you can't submit to him?" And she looked at me and said, "Honestly, I thought I could change him." Oh, what a mistaken poor lady. Don't marry a man you cannot choose to submit to, but choose to marry someone that has your best interests at heart, that wants you to be as Christ-like as possible. It's her voluntary choice, not his demand. And God is honored by righteous husbands who desire the best for their wives and make it easy for them to choose to yield to his instructions when necessary. Now, Tuesday, we're going to come back and look at the husband. If you think the husbands are getting away easy, you wait till Tuesday and find out what God has to say to the husbands. But remember, he starts this passage out that we ought to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. May you and I learn what submission truly means and how to submit to God's instructions and actions for our lives. God bless you.